Hello, good day to you. My name is Brodie McLeod and this is one of my Wastecast videos. It's just simple shit blogs with irrelevant information about my journey through the mental health system over the last year and some issues and obstacles I've had to negotiate and tackle and overcome in various different ways, sort of psychologically and from a viewpoint of litigation in a civil context, and even according to Gemini, which is not a verifiable source of legal information. I would add the caveat that I'm not necessarily alleging, based on what I've been told by AI, that a crime has taken place, but it's very strongly implied and it is backed up by legislation. AI can hallucinate citations sometimes and get things wrong, and I've double checked a lot of the things. If you've seen any of my other videos about the NHS Trust suddenly changing halfway through my detention, and a social worker who South Gloucestershire Council said they had no idea had been to meet me and wouldn't give me their mobile number or their email address or establish any sort of paper trail. Then in another video, more shockingly, there was some other details which transpired from me getting my primary care records and GP records. Since I've been in this hospital, at the beginning of August 2024, well over a year now, I was at the main site, which is Cygnet, Western Supermare. It's a very large building on Beach Road, it's called, Bravo Sierra 22 9UZ. I'm now at the lodge, which is, see my room here. I don't want to fuck up the camera angle, but yeah, that's my room. It's directly above the ward office. It's number 2, my room. Okay, the camera angle's not too bad. So anyway, I had a bit of a dispute. I asked for my medical legal scrutiny checklist. If you don't know what that is, Google it, or ask Gemini or ChatGPT or Grok or whatever you use to get your probably accurate sources of information from. A medical legal scrutiny checklist is like a really important part of your section paperwork. And they said for about 6 months when I was on Hayward ward that I could only have a look at it on a computer screen. And that struck me as very, very, very sort of strange, a very atypical way to, you know, sort of verify that you've got documents. Section 136 and the Data Protection Act and all the other acts say that you've got a right to access your documents, and that's what this video is about. So they said I could have a copy of this on a computer screen. I could look at it, but I couldn't see it, and that's very dodgy indeed. What was the most dodgy is that when I got my GP records through, I asked for all historical records from my whole life. There were about 37 years missing. So it starts in 2023. I'm 39 now and it's 2025. So you can do the maths. I'm not very good at it. But there was just nothing for my whole life's medical history was missing. And more worryingly, these people who've been refusing to show me the kind of provide me printed copies of the paperwork regarding my detention for such a long time, also hadn't shared any data with the NHS. There's another video about this. Check out my last sort of few videos if you want more information on the NHS Trust changing and how that renders my detention unlawful and the actions that have been taken about that. If you want to find out about my other issues that I've mentioned, GP records, implicitly that's evidenced and sort of mentioned in other videos. I'm going to crack on with this one now. There is an RMN who, that stands for Registered Mental Health Nurse. They have to train for 4 years and they get paid a bit more than normal support workers or healthcare assistants. And to be a registered mental health nurse, you have to go through quite stringent qualifications, and there is a nursing database, the Nursing and Midwifery Council. I've checked and verified this lady's information on there, and to cut a long story short, I asked for my section papers. Section papers are bits of paper where 2 different people called AMPs write down, following an assessment, why they think you need admission to be in hospital, and they have to be Section 12 approved by the Ministry of Justice as people that are allowed to detain British citizens. It's only police and approved mental health professionals that can do that. So I put in this request and she said, that's fine, I'll look into it, I'll get them for you. I said, thank you. About a few days later, I went back to the office and said, where are these papers, mate? You know, this, you've got something called the Mental Health Act Administrator. They should provide these papers to you. You know, they do it like it's their most common request. Mental health, you know, people who go to mental hospital can have a tribunal or a hospital manager's hearing, and that's how you can get off your section. And most people want to have a look anyway and see what the AMPs have written about them to make sure it's accurate. You know, if they said that you covered yourself in peanut butter and ran naked down the road claiming to be Joan of Arc, you know, and you didn't, then you've got, you know, reasonable grounds to complain. There's also other information and stipulations and rules and regulations and guidelines all about all that sort of stuff. But I was told when I asked after quite a long time, several days, that I couldn't have my section papers. Well, she said, well, Brody, we're worried that you might be a bit worried about this unlawful detention thing. And like, if you do breach the Mental Health Act and the Code of Practice and your detention is rendered unlawful, they've changed my NHS trust to a trust that's 100 miles away from my ordinary residence, which is where I live. I'll make another video about that separately. But yeah, that, you know, that obviously anybody who's unlawfully detained or subject to an unlawful deprivation of liberty, breaching the Human Rights Act, is entitled to the documents. They're entitled to them anyway, but especially if there's something that's gone wrong or a problem, like, she should be like, yeah, I'll definitely get them for you if we think there might be a problem with your section. The diametric opposite of her attitude, which was like sort of censorship, obstruction, repression, and I was really not happy about it. And, you know, I waited for a few more days, and then I emailed her, and she emailed me back. Then I emailed the hospital manager, and that's what I'm going to walk you through today. This folder here, I wrote a document. It really wasn't very good, and it's full of typos and stuff, but there's a basic intro in there which will kind of give you a rundown of what I'm talking about today. It's not very well written, but here it is. So here, far below this, several pages down, is an itinerary of emails between myself and RMN, that's Registered Mental Health Nurse, who, following an already protracted delay, following a request for the statutory forms, which is another way of referring to them, regarding my detention at Cygnet Stoke, outrageously claimed that if I were to consider investigating whether my detention is unlawful, this could invalidate the request and justify refusal to provide my section papers. Joshua Tapp, hospital manager at Cygnet Stoke, Joji John, ward manager at the lodge, although for some reason the website shows him as the manager at a different ward. I've been here since the beginning of June. They still haven't updated the website, I don't know why, but he's on their website, on the Meet the Team page screenshot. You can go online and just look at the Cygnet Stoke website if you want more information. My responsible clinician is on there as well, although she's not mentioned in these emails. I should have really copied her into the emails, but I didn't. I've had to redact the name of the RMN because you can't necessarily name them or share their personal details due to Cygnet policy and broadly the interpretation of GDPR and the Data Protection Act in terms of people's rights. And I am happy to share this information with anybody who thinks that they want to know in a private capacity or in a kind of enforcement or litigation capacity. But I digress. Where were we? Joji John, he's the ward manager at the lodge. Mike Kambasha was copied into these emails. I've had a few interactions with him before. He's the clinical manager, which is a bit different from the general manager, and also Cygnet's data protection department feature in these emails. A clinical manager was included, but as I've just mentioned, he didn't reply. Below are some profiles from the Cygnet website. I'll let you go online and me read these. So yeah, Joshua Tapp, hospital manager. He is quite polite and intelligent most of the time. When I kind of don't have as much of a good opinion of him, I feel a little bit like he hasn't taken this seriously and he's trying to obstruct an investigation which he could solve in about 3 minutes if he so wished. Disregarding my requests for further information, he can sort of root out misconduct or malfeasance without needing to do anything, really. Joji John is a ward manager. he's not also taken any action. I haven't really kind of lambasted him about that. I've gone straight to the general manager, but the ward manager was copied into the emails as well. So it goes on to say, below is a thread of emails regarding the initial refusal of my section papers being provided to me under the absurd caveat that if I were to wish to litigate or investigate supposed issues surrounding unlawful detention, then I would not potentially be allowed access to the statutory forms which undergird the legal basis of my detention, which started on the 9th of July 2024 and continues up to the present day. Rather than simply completing a common and extremely straightforward administrative task provided by the Mental Health Act Administrator's Office in every instance and on a regular basis, I was told in an email that various different departments and senior staff members would have to, for some reason, be involved in the provision of the statutory forms. It was the same registered mental health nurse who verbally claimed that I was not to use my own medical forms to investigate unlawful detention. This struck me as absolutely unacceptable and utterly absurd. And having researched the issue, I found my initial reaction was not unfounded, and this is very much reinforced by the legislation, guidance, policy, and most importantly, law surrounding the issue. I've had several emails from the manager of Cygnet, who as I mentioned in my various responses, I don't feel has taken due notice of a serious misconduct issue, which in my opinion could have been very much something to be treated as a matter of urgency, and more importantly, could have been resolved with extremely little effort or administrative investigation. Like 5 minutes of this guy's time would have, would kind of put it into concrete, binary, cold light of day. The facts and procedural narrative are binary, as I've just said, and could have been easily verified in minutes by any of the parties involved, especially the Mental Health Act Administrator's Office, who supply patients with their section papers on a regular basis as part of the remit of their role within the structure of the hospital. I feel there's been a concerted effort by both the management and the RMN to obfuscate the paper trail related to my detention at the hospital. This is exemplified by the initial verbal excuse for not providing the papers, which does not stand up to any kind of scrutiny or law. Then, in addition to this, the request of the Cygnet manager, Joshua Tapp, to meet me in person for a verbal conversation off the record, which would have no paper trail or verifiable legitimacy. This is legitimacy. This is like a pattern. They've done this with several complaints actually. They come and give me a letter. I email the complaint in, they come and give me a letter, so haven't got an inbox that says that they've not upheld a complaint, which they should have done. The most recent piece of literature I received from the hospital regarding this issue was delivered to me by hand in printed paper format. Given that the majority of this grievance and the evidential basis of any investigation is incumbent within the thread of emails I've copied in below, the letter delivered by hand further demonstrates a desire to avoid accountability and dilute the narrative of my grievance, which, as far as I'm concerned, constitutes a serious and urgent issue regarding compliance, potential malfeasance, malfeasance and other legal contraindications for which any acting manager should be a matter of priority, to be treated with the utmost transparency and accountability. Below is a timeline of email communications between myself and various contacts at the hospital in line with GDPR regulations and hospital policy. I've had to redact some names and screenshots of the emails sent and received. Now that is all of these in my Google files. You can't read them in that document very well, but I'll put a link to it in the description if anybody should wish to have a copy of it. I'm going to move this recording widget out of the way and this floating thing out of the way. And I'm guessing you can probably read this on YouTube, but I'm going to read it out anyway. So I said, this was me writing to the RMN. So, dear Censored, I'm writing to formally request my statutory forms regarding my detention under Section 2 and 3 commencing 9th of July 2024, along with accompanying S2 and S3 patient information letters, which detail my responsible clinician, my nearest relative, and the date the section ends. This request was made approximately a week ago. As per my rights, I require access to my Section 2 and Section 3 paperwork. I understand that the MHA office should find it straightforward to either email or print these documents, especially given the advance notice. I would prefer email PDF copies. I must reiterate, my right to access my medical information is explicit and does not require a justification of my motivations. Your previous contemplation regarding why I wanted these documents was arbitrary, as this information is confidential to me. questioning my motivation for making this request, as you did, constitutes a dereliction of duties. Under Section 132 of the Mental Health Act 1983, patients have got a right to information concerning their detention and treatment. Furthermore, Article 8 of the Human Rights Act 98 protects my rights to respect for my private and family life, which includes access to my personal medical information. And of course, the Data Protection Act, UK GDPR, also grants the right to access my personal data, including health records, without undue delay. Legally, you've no right to demand any rationale from me to facilitate, accompany or justify this simple request. Providing approximately 8 to 10 sides of A4 should take no longer than 24 hours. Given the request was submitted last week and it's now Monday, I expect to receive copies of my statutory detention forms along with their respective Section 2 and 3 letters today. That was sent, as you can see on the top, just underneath the shadow, on Monday, the 29th of September, in the morning. This was the email I got back at 11:02 from the RMN. As previously discussed, dear Brodie, this has to go through the correct channels, such as the MHA office. Bang on, spot on, correct. It's them who provide them. Then she says RC. Now that stands for responsible clinician. Responsible clinician, right, is somebody who gets paid like about 150 grand a year, who is a doctor of psychiatry and psychiatric medicine and prescribes medicine and assesses mental patients, you know, and provides treatment for psychiatric disorders. That's their speciality remit. What they don't do is fuck around with bits of paper and medical documents and have any involvement in the data protection or Mental Health Act administration of this upholding Section 132 of the Mental Health Act or GDPR, anything like that. So the RC shouldn't be in there. I should have emailed her really and included them with it, but I don't think I've got her email address, and I kind of just didn't think to. Hospital manager definitely, again, doesn't have any involvement in, you know, they're far too busy. They've got a lot of other stuff to do. It's much more important running a hospital with like 100 patients in it and like 4 wards, 5 wards, and data protection department, who only really deal with large requests. So I'm just gonna have a sip of my tea, a bit uncouth. Nice orange mug, don't know who this belongs to, but yeah. Data protection kind of aren't completely irrelevant, but when someone asks for their section papers, like everybody does this, whenever anyone gets a solicitor or a tribunal to get themselves out of hospital, they get their mental health, they get the section papers, which is just like an A4 envelope with, you know, yeah, like I said, 8 to 10 sides of A4 in there. But they wouldn't really have anything to do with just providing the section papers. The MHA would just do all of it, basically. They just go, yep, cool, you know, they print them off for you, they email them over, and, you know, whatever ward office you're in will just print them off for you. It's not a complicated, unusual, protracted, difficult, atypical process. It's just it's like the daily bread. It's like, you know, people making cups of coffee in a cafe. Like, they do it for, you know, people all the time. Like, it's not all they do, but it's like a huge part of their daily remit and a very common request, which is simple, straightforward, shouldn't take more than a week, certainly shouldn't require me to have to agree that I'm not going to try and uphold my own human rights by, you know, addressing any errors or problems in the documents. It goes on to say in this email, if I can move all this shit out of the way, I've informed them, all of the previous parties who have no involvement, of your request and am awaiting their response. I've emailed the ward manager, JJ, into this so he can pick it up. That's Joji John. If I'm not on shift, as soon as we have the paperwork you've requested, we'll let you know. I'll chase this up today through MHA admin. I think that was not accurate information that was given to me on the 29th of September at 11:02. That was 5 days ago yesterday when I took these screenshots. This one is also going to be difficult to read, but we'll give it a go. Get rid of all this weird colourful stuff around the edges. This was at 11:51 on the 29th of September. As you can see next to my beautiful face in the corner. This is appearing very small, but hopefully if you've got like an 8K massive TV and you're watching me on that, then you'll be able to read this really easily, or on a computer monitor. If it's on your phone, it's going to be about 1mm text, so just listen. I said this email back to management, various different contacts including, I believe, the RMN. Said, thanks for your email. Your response is noted but is entirely unacceptable. It fails to address the legal basis of my request, seeks to justify an unlawful delay through a non-existent, overtly bureaucratic process. This email serves as both formal complaint regarding the handling of my request and a final demand for the immediate release of my documents. 1. This is a subject access request SAR. My request for my statutory forms constitutes a subject access request under the Data Protection Act 2018 and UK GDPR. You have a legal duty to provide this information without undue delay. The process you describe is not credible. The assertion that this request needs approval from the RC, that's my responsible clinician, my psychiatrist, consultant psychiatrist, the hospital manager who spends his time managing a hospital, not providing papers to patients, and a separate data protection officer is incorrect for statutory forms held by the MHA Administration Office. I can't actually see it because the camera's in the way, like the hole on the camera on my phone. The MHA Administrator's function is precisely to manage and provide these documents. Please cite the specific Cygnet healthcare policy and the legal statute that requires this multi-layered approval process for a patient to access their own detention papers. If you cannot, I will proceed on the basis that this process has been fabricated to obstruct my request. 3. Formal complaint regarding staff conduct. I'm formally complaining about your conduct and that of my responsible clinician. As noted previously, my motive, that's who the nurse claimed, my RC had said I can't have them if I'm going to make a complaint or litigate. That's what she claimed verbally to me. So as noted, I put that into a Gemini prompt who wrote this email for me, as you can probably tell. As noted previously, my motivations for requesting my own confidential information were questioned. It was suggested the request was stalled because I may be investigating my own unlawful detention. This is not only a profound violation of my privacy and rights under Article 8 of the Human Rights Act, but it also confirms the hospital's awareness of the questionable nature of my detention. Hindering my ability to gather evidence for legal challenge is a serious matter. I require this formal complaint to be logged and escalated to the hospital director immediately. Demands. I demand you immediately forward PDF copies of all my statutory forms for my Section 2 and my Section 3 detentions. Sorry, I had to pause there. They were doing the obs on my door and I don't want to catch them verbally or have them in this video, the staff that is. That's here at the lodge. So where was I up to? I want my Section 2 and Section 3 detentions commencing the 9th of July 2024, along with the accompanying patient information letters to this email address. I expect these documents to be sent by 1700 British BST today, Monday the 29th of September 2025. I demand that you attach a copy of the original email or digital record of my first request from last week to establish a clear timeline of your organisation's failure to act. I demand a written explanation and apology for the inappropriate and unlawful questioning of my motives for this request. If I do not receive the requested documents by 5 o'clock, I will, without further notice, be filing formal complaints to the Information Commissioner's Office, haven't done that yet, for a breach of the Data Protection Act 2018, and with the Care Quality Commission, CQC, which I have contacted the Care Quality Commission, but there's a smorgasbord of different issues and they're getting a bit confused. I've got to email them today on my to-do list. Failure to comply with its duties under the Mental Health Act 1983. That is Cygnet Q-Stokes' failure to comply. I trust you will now treat this matter with the urgency it requires. The next email was from the manager who said, Dear Brody, this is Joshua Tapp, the guy that you saw a picture of at the beginning of the video. Thanks for your email. I wanted to acknowledge receipt of this request for both access to documentation and to raise a formal complaint. I'll get myself out of the way. This request has been passed to Data Protection Team this morning, awaiting response, but I will keep you updated. I cannot guarantee that this will be ready for you by 5 p.m, but we will advise once I have their response. Separately, we'll acknowledge the concerns in line with our formal complaints procedure. This was kind of a bit of a sort of, fuck off nicely, to put it bluntly. Like, it's sort of like he should have, he didn't really need to email me. All he needed to do was email the MHA and say, can you email Brody's section papers to the RMN at the lodge because he wants them and he's been waiting for over a week. Simple as that. I mean, he didn't really even need to acknowledge, and it's nice of him to acknowledge the email, but he's not taking ownership, and that actually continued. That was the general kind of consensus going forward. Then there was this, which kind of was just an attempt by the RMN to sort of muddy the waters a little bit. So is it correct not to print off paperwork until we've had clearance from data protection? I think she's kind of just trying to play stupid here and sort of establish a sub-thread so there isn't like a clear delineation of the narrative of these emails, and kind of put it down to human error when she probably knows that I've got every right to investigate anything I want to investigate regarding the legality of my section. Anybody does if you're detained by a mental hospital in Britain. And data protection normally won't get involved, basically, according to AI. It's just the MHA officer. I know because I've been in hospital like about 9 times. Credibility vacuum. These guys are in an accountability vacuum, but I'm a credibility vacuum in that I've been sectioned a lot of times, and for various reasons there's a lot of things that have been suboptimal. But that was an email that I got about lunchtime, just after lunch, 6 days ago now. The data protection team got back to me, said, "Good afternoon all. The data protection team can and will process any SARs received. However, you're not required to request approval from the data protection team to release statutory mental health patient paperwork to a detained service users." Like I said, they don't have any involvement, and they've admitted to that. The other emails will be picked up and reviewed by somebody else who is the deputy data protection officer, and I just wanted to provide some clarity around this point. That's from the head of digital operations. They're basically saying the RMN probably could just print them off from the database in the office downstairs, like below my room. This was at lunchtime. This was like 10 to 2, as you can see. So manager got back to me again. He said, "Thank you for your response. Your request," it should say, "you request for information spans beyond the detention papers, which, as you rightly outline, as a statutory entitlement, you have asked for original emails, copies of policies. These requests in totality have been sent to our central data protection team," which is kind of fair enough. He could have just checked the email inbox of the RMN, and I'm pretty sure they've got a database of policies to refer to so they can do their job properly, and they're trained on them regularly. I reckon they could have got the original emails and downloaded the policies, put them into an email, and that would have taken about 8 minutes. If they've got an adequate database and CRM system, I think they've got pretty advanced kind of record keeping and contemporaneous digital systems here at Cygnet Q-State. They a very large company, sort of 600 million turnover, 150 hospitals across the UK. They're not stupid. They know how to manage a hospital, and they know where their policies are, kept, and how to download and read them, and how to read emails internally as well, especially if they're evidence of something which might be, clinically inappropriate or even criminal. It goes on to say, "Whilst this information is gathered and reviewed, please see attached PDF copies of your section paperwork as requested. Please let me know if you feel there's anything outstanding relating to the section paperwork. The outstanding requests are being reviewed," it should say, "by our central data protection team, and your concerns across both emails will be investigated as a formal complaint. I'm happy to meet with you tomorrow if helpful to hear your concerns and update you on the outstanding requests. Let me know if you'd like to do this at a convenient time." I got back to him. Several screenshots on this video. I got back to him on the 30th of September. I said, "Dear Mr. Tapp, thank you for your email and for providing the PDF of my section papers. I have received them." So attached to that email, there was a bunch of attachments. There was like 3 or 4 PDF folders with most of my information. "However, your response is once again wholly inadequate. It confirms my view that you're deliberately avoiding your direct managerial responsibilities in favour of procedural deflection. The core issue of gross misconduct by your staff remains unaddressed by you, and a review of the documents you have now sent has exposed further serious procedural failings by your Mental Health Act administration. Move this widget out of the way and the recording widget you can't see. I must decline your offer of an informal meeting, I said. This is a formal matter involving staff misconduct, breaches of my statutory rights, and potentially criminal actions perverting the course of justice. Such matters require a formal, documented and accountable line of communication. Given the Cygnet policy prohibits patients from making their own digital recordings of meetings, a policy that contradicts NHS England guidance and hinders transparency, an off-the-record discussion would serve only to create a vacuum of accountability, which I will not accept. I went on to say, your continued managerial failure and complicity. You have been made aware that a member of your nursing staff, RMN, who shall not be named, provided demonstrably false information in writing to a detained patient in an attempt to obstruct a lawful request for evidence. This is not a matter for a service complaint that may take months to conclude. It's a live safeguarding and disciplinary issue requiring your immediate intervention as manager. To use an analogy, if a hospital porter were found to be performing surgery, a competent manager would not simply direct the victims to the PALS team and allow the porter to continue their duties unabated. They would act immediately to safeguard patients. Your failure to act with similar urgency here, in the face of serious allegation of misconduct, is a profound dereliction of your duty of care. You could, it says, resolve the central pillar of this complaint instantly. I ask you again directly, please confirm in writing whether you as hospital manager have any professional remit or authority in the process of providing a service user with their statutory section papers. If you answered that question, then it would just solve the issue straight away. And he knows the answer to that question because he knows what he does every day. He's not kind of, it's like really straightforward. It's nothing involved or complicated about it. The request for the even the request for the policies and the internal emails, regarding my request, shouldn't really have taken very long. It goes on to say, your continued refusal to answer this simple question of fact is tantamount to an admission. It demonstrates that you know the information I was given was false, and your avoidance suggests a deliberate choice to protect your staff from the consequences of their actions rather than to protect a patient's rights. This inaction makes you professionally negligent and arguably complicit in the original misconduct. Your duties of good governance and safeguarding under the Health and Social Care Act 2008, Regulated Activities Regulations 2014, require you to act, not defer. I don't know, I'm not going to sort of bolster that citation, but that's what AI told me. So with that preface, that's what I assume. Analysis of defective and missing statutory documents. My review of the papers you sent has revealed the following critical failures which I require you to address. There might be some mistakes in this too. Again, I used AI to write these emails, but I'm not publishing them with the caveat that they are anything but that. So, A, repeated failure to inform upon renewal, which is a breach of Section 132 Mental Health Act. My detention has been renewed twice since the original Section 3 began. Section 3 lasts for 6 months and then a year. January 2025 and July 2025. The hospital's own administrative checklists for both renewals, Form H5, clearly show the box ticked no against the question. Has the patient been informed of the renewal and have the Section 132 patient rights been reissued? This is a direct admission on your own paperwork of a repeated and serious breach of my statutory rights under Section 132 of the Mental Health Act 1983. Failure to provide me with the reason for my continued detention, the duration of the new period, and information on my right to appeal to the Mental Health Tribunal may render my ongoing detention unlawful. Illegibility of statutory forms means you couldn't read them. The handwritten rationale provided by the approved mental health professional on Form A6 and parts of the rationale from the responsible clinician on Form AA are illegible. The MHA Code of Practice Chapter 4 is explicit that information must be provided to patients in an accessible and understandable format. Illegible cursive on a legal document that forms the basis of my detention fails to meet the standard. Missing information for current detention period. While the H5 form for the most recent renewal in July 2025 is present, as evidenced by your own records, I was never provided with the associated patient information letter or a verbal explanation of my rights at the time. This compounds the breach of section 132 mentioned above. The simple presence of a form in your files does not discharge your legal duty to inform me. Demands, once again, delegating these matters to other teams and lengthy complaint processes is no longer acceptable. As a manager responsible for the safety and lawful treatment of patients in this hospital, I require you to take the following immediate actions. Provide an immediate, on-the-record, written answer to the direct question regarding your professional role in authorising the release of section papers. Formally acknowledge the breach of my section 132 rights regarding the last 2 renewals of my detention. That's assuming that he'd sent me everything, the MHA had done their job properly, which I'm sure they can and would have done, if they could. The last 2 renewals of my detention, and provide a written explanation as to why these fundamental procedural safeguards failed on 2 separate occasions. Next page, let's get rid of all the Samsung shit. Provide fully legible, typed versions of all statutory forms, specifically the rationale sections of Form A6 and Form A8, because I couldn't read them. Confirm that the actions of RMN, who I'm complaining about and have censored, are being investigated as a serious disciplinary issue, separate from any service level complaint, given the potential for criminality. Your continued failure to act with diligence and immediacy this situation requires will be considered further evidence of your complicity and managerial negligence. This will be detailed in my formal reports to the CQC. I have been in touch with them about this, and the ICO, who I haven't got in touch with yet, in which you will be named personally as the manager who was notified of these serious issues and failed to take appropriate action. I expect a substantive response addressing these points without delay. Regards, me, my phone number, my now only address, which is the ward that I'm at. I got an email back. I got a letter, which I didn't read you. I can't believe I didn't read you the letter. Maybe I should read you the letter. I'm going to read you the letter. It's at the bottom of that document that I showed you, but I forgot because I'm disorganised and I'm a psychiatric patient. So he sent me a letter. I've got it over on my desk, actually. I'm not going to show you a picture of it right now, but he sent me a letter which I copied into this document as like a narrative to tell the story. It's not really very interesting, but it is quite interesting because it's really not sort of normal. So this was the letter that I got from the hospital manager, addressed it to me, Brodie ND McLeod, dated the 2nd of October. It said, "Thank you for contacting me on the 29th of September regarding a number of concerns relating to staff misconduct, handling of requests for section paperwork, and the process at Cygnet Hospital, Stoke underpinning this. I sincerely regret that you've had this experience and I appreciate you bringing it to our attention. I understand that this matter has involved several email exchanges and there have been conflicting indications whether you wish to raise a formal complaint. However, in order to ensure the matter is formally responded to, I have opened a complaint record and intend to commence investigation through this process in order to be able to provide you with a clear and transparent response, which will take bloody ages. If at any point you wish to withdraw or stop this process, please let me know. It's my way or the highway," is basically saying. I can confirm that the concerns that you have raised have been processed through our incident reporting protocols and appropriate action has already been taken to address the matter. However, as part of the formal complaint investigation, we will further review the issues you have highlighted to provide a clear explanation of what occurred, assess any learning opportunities and determine whether any additional action is required. Please be assured that your complaint has been taken seriously and we're committed to addressing it with care and attention. You'll receive a response once we have addressed the matter fully. In your concerns email dated the 30th of September, you asked, "Please confirm in writing whether you as hospital manager have any professional remit or authority in the process of providing a service user with their statutory section papers." I can confirm that staff are not required to seek approval from the data protection team before releasing statutory Mental Health Act paperwork to a detained service user, and said this includes myself in my capacity as the registered manager. It's kind of almost like you could almost look at that in two contexts, couldn't you? Like, you could say, but if he'd written, but this includes myself in my capacity as registered manager or hospital manager, I think is another term that's like used. It's a bit ambiguous, but he's, in fairness to Joshua Tapp, I think he's trying to, do as I'd asked there, in a sense. What happens next? I understand you've chosen to not speak with me directly and to discuss your concerns further. To ensure your views are clearly heard and appropriately addressed, I would encourage you to consider accessing advocacy support. Given that some of your concerns relate to my own role and actions, I want to reassure you that an investigator independent of the management of Cygnet Hospital, Stoke, will be appointed to review and respond to your complaint. This is to ensure transparency and fairness throughout the investigation. I disagree with that vehemently, which you'll see in the next email, or the email that I sent in response to the handwritten letter, which was trying to avoid a paper trail once again. Like, it's a pattern emerging here very much in different respects. So it went on to say that's the investigating officer, may wish to contact you to speak to you further about your concerns. If you speak to them, please let them know what outcome you're hoping for and how we might resolve your concerns at this stage. If they are unable to contact you for any reason, they will proceed with the investigation. So if they just turn up when I'm on leave or whatever, once their findings have been received, we'll write to you again with the outcome in line with our complaints procedure. We aim to provide a response by the 24th of October. If for any reason we're unable to meet the response date, we'll write to you as soon as possible to let you know. Where complaints are of a complex nature, which this one is not, we may take longer to investigate and provide a final response. We'll always keep you updated. And then it's got like, you can go to the Ombudsman if you want, that, and it's got like, yeah, we value your feedback. Nice one, thanks very much. Cygnet Hospital, Stoke, etc. Blah blah blah. Where are we up to in this thread of emails? I think we were at like number 7 or number 8. Let's have a look. So that was the one that had lots of screenshots. And this is where we were. Again, millimeter text. If you're looking at it on your phone, you probably can just read it if you've got 20/20 vision. But I'll read it out, so you might not have to be able to read it. So this is an email I sent to Josh Tapp on the 4th of October, a few days after. I'm writing to acknowledge receipt of your hand-delivered letter. Both its content and its method of delivery are noted and are entirely unacceptable. Your decision to revert to physical correspondence is a transparent and regressive tactic designed to disrupt the verifiable digital trail and to evade direct on-the-record accountability. I will be continuing all communication via email for the purposes of clarity and evidence. Your insistence that this matter now be exclusively handled by a formal third-party investigation is a complete abdication of your duties as hospital manager. While a formal complaint is indeed underway, you seem to fundamentally misunderstand your role. You're not a passive observer awaiting a report that may take months to materialise. You are the manager on site with an immediate and urgent duty to assess allegations of staff misconduct and safeguard patients. The central issue is not complex. It does not require a lengthy independent inquiry. It's a simple matter of fact based on written evidence you already possess. The questions you're so determinedly evading remain. Did a member of your nursing staff, RMN censored, provide false information in writing in an attempt to obstruct my lawful request for my statutory papers? And 2, as hospital manager, do you have any role in authorising the release of a patient's section papers? You could answer these questions today by simply reviewing the email exchange. Your refusal to do so is a conscious choice. It's a choice to protect your staff and institution from accountability rather than to uphold my statutory rights and ensure my safety from misconduct. This is not a service level issue about a delayed response. It's an issue of professional integrity and potential criminality. By deferring all action, you are allowing a staff member who has been shown to be deceptive to continue in their role without consequence, which is a failure of your duty of care. Furthermore, while you attempt to bury this issue in procedure, you continue to ignore the serious and unresolved breaches of the Mental Health Act revealed in my paperwork. The admitted failure to inform me of my rights upon renewal of my section, a breach of Section 132 of the Mental Health Act, is a matter of fact evidenced by your hospital's own records. This is not something that requires investigation. It requires immediate acknowledgement and remedy. I therefore reject your attempt to deflect your responsibilities. I expect you as the manager of this hospital to answer the direct questions put to you and to address the statutory breaches that have occurred under your management. Your continued failure to do so will be documented as a central element of my formal complaints to CQC and the ICO, and I will make it clear that you were made aware of serious misconduct and significant procedural failings, and you actively chose obfuscation and delay over your direct managerial and safeguarding responsibilities. I will await your substantive response. It's not the 4th of October anymore, and he hasn't got back to me since then. So, yeah, that is where I'm up to with it at the moment. I don't think they're doing things by the book. There's nothing on my medical records to suggest I've been at Cygnet Q-Stoke at all. There's been prescriptions of about 7 or 8 different medications. There's been trips to hospital. There's been changes of diagnosis. There's been changes in NHS trust. There's been treatment by general practitioners who visited the ward. I've had vaccines. I've had antipsychotic medicine injections. None of it's on my GP primary care record. There isn't an opt-out for not sharing information. It's like, it's completely random. I tried to ask, every time I've asked for information, they've tried to give me an excuse as to how they're not going to provide it or why I shouldn't be given it. And that coupled with, please see my other video about the social worker who wouldn't give me their details. And I had a key worker who is like what they used to call a care coordinator. Now they've got this different thing with community mental health teams, which you can Google what a CMHT is and what a community psychiatric nurse is if you haven't heard that term before and you're not a mental patient like me, at your leisure. But yeah, so there is just no accountability or verifiable paper trail with this one. It's just like they want to do everything like verbally with handwritten letters and give me ridiculous excuses as to why. I was told by one RMN when I was on Hayward Ward that I couldn't leave the ward if I had my passport with me until I showed her that it was invalid. I've got a new passport since then, which I did have a complaint I made quite a few videos about that I thought somebody pinched the other day. Well, I won't go into that. That's terrifying. I thought I was going to be the victim of human trafficking or something. Oh, there's the camera going down. Yeah, really stressful. Not very good investigation into what happened there. And I've had this recording complaint for ages. They don't let you take voice notes of meetings or consultations, which again avoids accountability and transparency. Staff deface their IDs, refuse to show their IDs. That includes consultant psychiatrists giving me medication. And they've just kept everything a secret from the NHS. So, like if I had to go for an operation and I was on some, like whatever meds I'm on, they need to know that information, you know. If I'm, you know, need emergency medical treatment, then like they need to know that. I bought this shit hat off of Amazon. It's supposed to be a white DC thing, and it's not. And it's supposed to be a flat peak as well. Look, it's not a flat peak hat. I'm not sure. Is it a flat? I suppose you could just about get away with it. It's really comfy, and I'm bold. You see, I'm bold and old. I'm like nearly 40 now, so I wear sometimes a cap. I don't think it looks too bad. Probably looks a lot better than these emails are making Cygnet Q-Stoke look. But do watch the other videos and you'll probably form a more broad opinion. And just for the record, I haven't spoken to any police, investigative journalists, solicitors or anybody, and nobody has told me that they've tried to contact. this is like, might be my paranoia, but they keep coming up to me and asking me weird questions like, oh, Brody, just that I'm going to say no to. So it's like, have you ordered a taxi? It's like, no, I haven't ordered a taxi. Have you ordered a takeaway, Brody? No. Like, do you want to go and like go down to the farm in the rain and plant some courgettes, Brody? Things that like the other day they were asking me, like, they've done this about 3 times. Like, walk into the room, approach me after I've had my meal, lunchtime or dinner, and say, oh, are you not going to have any dinner? And it's like, yeah, like I'm concerned that people have tried to ring the ward to get hold of me, and it would fit the bill for somebody that's not telling the NHS that I'm here, giving me no verifiable paper trail of like every complaint I've made. Not every complaint, but like loads of them. About 4 have been responded to by letter. Anyway, this is a fucking 50-minute video. So God bless you, and have a good day. If you want to get hold of me, you can ring me on, well, I don't know, my phone's probably hacked, but you can probably ring me on 07576 713 026. You can email, all my details are in the emails, just have a look. You can email me, brodymcleodtemp@gmail.com. You probably can't be asked to do that, or you don't want to do that. And you can follow me on Twitter at Brody Likes You, all lowercase, all one word, BRODIE likes you. And on Instagram, which hasn't really got many selfies of me recently, but I'll try and I'll put one on today. I'll put a selfie on today. Maybe I'll do that now, actually. Let's see if I can do it in wonky mode. Let's have a little look here. There's a selfie I took. I don't know which one's better. Doesn't look very good. In the shower the other day. There you go. I'll put that as a post. Instagram doesn't do. Whoops. It's exciting, isn't it? Bit of chasing status. Took a picture. It's the AI on the camera. It's like lit it really badly, and you can see my lazy eye where I broke my eye socket at Sam's school, which would be in my GP records. I could tell you all about this weird eyebrow that I've got. It's asymmetrical, but I can't. But if you want to see my Instagram profile page, that's me. And there's a selfie I've just posted of me stood in my bathroom today. There it is. Doesn't look very good. The bathroom. That's where I took that photo. In that bathroom. Come and see me. Get in touch. Like, follow, subscribe. Advise me legally and morally and ethically on what I should do. You know. Thanks for watching, and all the best.